Soma, we're back in Visual Studio World. So what's going on?
We just released Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5. It's an amazing day today.
Excellent. So we have some other people in the room here with us. Hello. Who are you?
I am Carol Grojean, and I'm the project manager of the Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5 release.
Outstanding. We've had you on Channel 9 before.
You had us when we did our MQ effort.
Yeah.
That set us up for intentional engineering and set us up for success for Orcus, and we're here to tell you it was successful and all that goodness came true, and we learned a lot.
Cool.
And it was very fun.
Outstanding. And who are you?
I'm Jeff Beehler, Chief of Staff for Team System, and so that's part of the whole big release for Visual Studio 2008. So that's Team Foundation Server and all the role-based SKUs for the ALM practice. So
Outstanding.
we're very excited.
It's actually a big part because we use Team System to also help manage the project, and so that gave us an element of control over our project, which helped us be very successful.
Nice. So you
So
dog
it was a
fooded.
great product, yes.
All right.
Carol's a big fan.
I'm a huge fan.
Cool.
I would do my family finances in TFS if I could.
Wow. Incredible. So you're telling me that TFS was used in the production of this application?
Yes.
Absolutely. We used
Very
it.
nice.
Absolutely, many ways.
That's right. We used it in a bunch of different ways. So we
Uh-huh.
used it to help us track our bugs and code defects, as well as the work, tasks, and that sort of thing that we needed to track. We tracked all of our features and deliverables in TFS, so we were able to keep track of what our scope was, be able to make it, just the right size to fit into the schedule. We also tracked all our exit criteria and
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff
We
in
built our
there.
readmes out of TFS. We do our servicing out of TFS.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it's amazing.
We had a lot of our source code in TFS.
That's
Yep.
right.
Really?
A
Absolutely.
lot of our source code was in TFS. We used MS Build to build our system. It's pretty much like, talk about dog fooding end to end. That's what we did with Visual Studio 2008. So in some sense, you can argue that, we've been using Visual Studio 2008 for the last, 9 months or so as we were building Visual Studio 2008.
Yep.
Outstanding. So we've talked before in our interviews, Soma, I think this is number 3 in your office on Visual Studio 2008. We've talked about the new features, and so what are some of your favorites? I mean, that's kind of a silly question, but that's kind of what people would like to know. I mean, you're the VP of this thing, so.
If I have I have only 2 kids, but if I have half a dozen kids, it's like asking me, hey, which of my 3 kids I prefer more kind of thing. That's a hard one to answer because every feature is exciting.
Yeah.
But I'll say a few that sort of come top of mind for me. Link.
Yeah.
I've probably talked about Link every time I talk about Visual Studio 2008, but the advances that we are making in bringing the data and programming worlds together by exposing, a set of constructs in VB and C# to be able to treat data query as a first class object, first class citizen. That's a fantastic step forward in terms of enabling developers to be able to write data enabled applications in a much productive way. That's a huge sort of personal favorite for me. There are a variety of other features that I can talk about. Take Visual Studio Team System for example. We got a set of code analysis features built in. So if you have a body of code, we can sort of give you deeper insight into the code that you have, and to be able to highlight the problem spots or places where you may have some additional complexity that you may not even be aware of. So there are about 4 or 5 kinds of things that we analyze for you and tell you, and that's a hugely valuable feature for our developers, right? And I'll let these 2 guys talk about what some of their features are, because I can go on and on for the next 5 hours and still not be done.
Excellent. All right.
It's definitely a full-packed release. Another thing that I really like about Team Foundation Server this time is the support for continuous integration within the build system. That's a huge thing for a lot of our customers that want to be able to build every time they check something in to make sure that the build continues to work well. So that's we're really excited about that, and we use that ourselves as well.
Excellent.
So good stuff.
Let me add one more thing before I pass it on to Carol. Some of the work that we've done in web tools, particularly to sort of think about JavaScript programming as a first class citizen, be able to add great debugging support, IntelliSense and the like. That's a fantastic step forward for people who are playing in the JavaScript world.
Absolutely.
That's another favorite feature of mine.
Sure. And that comes out of Scott Goo's team, right?
That comes out of Scott Guthrie's team, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, Ajax and all that stuff.
Right.
Excellent. So there's a group of developers, though, that I think historically, because of the excitement we had with the advent of our version of managed code and the CLR, that we seem to not have forgotten, but a little bit sort of haven't been innovating in their space as rapidly as the newer spaces. Those would be the C++ developers, and you have many of them even on this team. In fact, most developers at Microsoft are writing C++ on our biggest products. So let's just talk a little bit about them for a second, and what's going on there with the innovation in the language and tools for the unmanaged types.
The good news is like now we have something exciting starting to happen for the C++ development community. It's not, some of it is not going to show through in Visual Studio 2008. It's going to show probably in the next 6 months or 8 months kind of thing. But I just recently blogged about this. We are working on updating our libraries for C++, both MFC as well as native libraries, with some rich, cool functionality that I think our C++ development community is going to be super excited about. That is something that the team is working on actively today. We hope to have a technology preview out of the same in the next couple of months, and then over the next 6 months we'll make that available as an addition to Visual Studio 2008. So that's one thing that we are doing for the C++ development community as we speak today.
Outstanding. Now, Carol, I interviewed Emma recently, Emma Williams, about intentional engineering.
Right.
And so when we talked earlier with Jennifer Ritzinger on the women episode that we did, I don't know how long ago, 9 months ago, we were talking about Scrum and that process.
Different methodologies.
So it worked. Like, let's talk about that. This product is actually 100% composed of that model. Yes?
Of Scrum or
intentional engineering, breaking
yes.
teams apart.
Yes, definitely intentional engineering. We, as we talked about during MQ, we got a little bit more intentional about our processes and how we get work done. We got explicit about what done is, and we moved from code complete model to the feature complete model. But we still enable teams to get work done as was best for that, local collection of individuals. So whether they did Scrum or XP or some other methodology by means of accomplishing done, we merely managed them to done. And so, but we also managed the release not only in milestones but also in iterations. So we kind of built a framework that helps, set them up for success, and we gave them clear kind of expectations and framework, but then we let them get their work done as was best for them, whether they wanted a more traditional waterfall model where they were more comfortable getting their specs all complete before they entered into engineering, or whether they iterated along the way. That was all goodness.
Outstanding.
And it's amazing. I work with teams. I work about 5 teams that work directly on Team System, and each one of them acts in a very different way. But the model we came up with allows for them to have local decisions being made in their own process, and but still work right into the whole effort for Visual Studio. So it's nice to be able to see that some teams choose a Scrum Agile-based model, and other teams take something a little bit more traditional, and it all worked together. It was great.
It's all okay.
Cool. So a couple questions. One about innovation in that model. I mean, and innovation in general in the product. The other thing is, what does the VP do? What's your role in this MQ model? People just bubble up stuff for you to say yes, no, yes, maybe, no?
I say the primary job is to get out of the way so that people can do their work. It's like, if you're talking specifically about MQ, I spent a fair amount of time before we started the MQ milestone with Carol and Jeff and a bunch of other people here in the division, sort of trying to figure out, what should we do in the MQ milestone, and at least from a team perspective, what are the 2 or 3 or 4 things that we want to get done across the division. And once sort of we had a good understanding of that, then folks like Carol and Jeff and everybody else in the division did a fantastic job of going and delivering on that.
Excellent.
He did what leaders do. He provided the leadership. I mean, he was very engaged in the beginning to help establish the pillars and the themes and give the overall a clear vision and goals of our success. And then he stepped back and he stood by those, but he enabled the organization to deliver on it. And when we didn't change from what our visions and our goals were, we held steady, and that really enabled us to be very successful.
Very cool. So we do a lot of innovation, and we create new features from iteration to iteration of new products. I mean, would it be? I think it's naive to think that every single new feature is born out of these intense meetings, and some people might just, a dev or a tester or a PM might just have a great idea, and then they pass it along. And you're like, let's implement this. Isn't that how it works? It's a more organic process and not as mechanistic as you think it would need to be for certain features.
Sort
Is that
of.
true or not?
Well, so at some point, especially after you're done planning and you've made some commitments around what are the major themes of the release, what's the value propositions of the release, which really help establish what's the most important work we get done. And then there's certain elements of work that some teams feel that are very strong value propositions for their customer base, but not necessarily for the whole product line. I mean, when you manage a product release, you really have to think that you have to get all the bits in the box and deliver something that's of value to the customers, but you have those intentional things that you're moving forward on for that release. And so as organic things come up, that's great. I mean, we always want the company innovating. What we have to do is have some element of control as to what we've committed to and keeping focused on that. And then what remains in terms of capacity and availability, how do those new innovations bubble up and come into alignment to the things that are most important to us and not risk us.
Yep.
Sounds good.
We had a few features on our team that really bubbled up from our own usage of the product. For instance, in the profiler generates tons and tons of data that is sometimes hard to go and figure out really where do I want to focus. So we have this new feature called hot pathing, which analyzes that data and really takes you to the area that based on our algorithms, we think that you should go focus on most first. And that feature was not one that we'd planned top down, or there are no value propositions about it or any of that. It's really just based on our own usage. Hey, this is an important thing for us to do based on customers and what we really wanted to do ourselves. So these things come from everywhere.
To me, the ideal thing is, particularly if you want to foster innovation and do a lot of that kind of thing, is to have an environment where it could be both tops down and bottoms up, right? Great ideas come from all over the place. The key is to provide an environment where you can have those great ideas flow in, and then be able to take a look at the whole list of ideas and then say, hey, which ones we are going to prioritize for this release versus which ones we are going to sort of wait for the next time. But you really want the idea from the individual engineer to the idea from a manager to the idea from who knows, from the top of the company kind of thing. All of this. I'll give you an example, right? When we had started working on Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5, sort of think about what should we do, what are the pillars, what are the themes, and we're talking about it. And then one of the teams, the WCF or the Windows Communication Foundation team, right, came up and said, hey, we've got some fantastic support in WCF today. I mean, this was like Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5. We have great support for WCF, but it's all based on WSTAR protocols, which is great in an enterprise environment. But if I want to go do something that is internet facing, maybe I ought to think about adding support for REST style protocols, right? And we looked at it and said, hey, that's a great addition to the .NET Framework 3.5. Let's go do that. And the team did a great job of executing and delivering on that. So you want to sort of catch all those ideas in a central container, and then say, hey, which ones can we afford to do? Which ones can we get to do in this time frame with the set of resources that we have, so that we can do a good job of whatever we are building. And it has to be both. It can't be either or.
It's totally the benefit of intentional engineering, because when those good ideas, some people might think having more project control or intentional engineering might discourage innovation, but the beauty is as innovation comes along, such as what the example Soma just gave, you actually know where you're at, and you know what the cost of bringing that in is and what the trade-off is, and you can make those decisions early and not get 6 months down the road and realize that you are going to slip something because you just added more to the plate. So it actually enables you to stay successful and bring innovation in and make the trade-offs and make it there.
Yeah, the other big thing, sorry, Soma.
No, go ahead.
Okay. The other big thing that we did this time around, and Carol's talked about it a bit, is the feature crew model. So, for instance, on this hot pathing feature, we were able to do all that work in a branch off to the side, make sure it was completely done, all tested, we had the high level of code coverage from our testing, and it was completely finished before we integrated it into the rest of the product. And so we didn't have to make that commitment or add any risk to the schedule until we were confident it was ready to go.
Outstanding.
I would say, if I have to sum it up, I would say intentional engineering is a nice buzzword kind of thing. The way I think about it in simple terms is hey, you want to be in a situation where you do what you say and you say what you do. Right? That's what this intentional engineering is all about. Being clear to ourselves and to our customers, what is it that we are going to do, and then following through on that and delivering on that. That's what it is all about, right? I sort of have been in the company now for a long time, meaning like now 18, 19 years kind of thing, right? So I've seen like many product releases across multiple different divisions. I would say like, the work that we did in this division with MQ and all the sort of quality gates and the feature group models and all the process improvements and the tools improvements that we made, this is probably one of the biggest re-engineering that we've done internally to set ourselves up for success. And the fact that we are sort of, we have delivered today a great product, a great set of products in Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5, pretty much on time, with high quality and a great set of features, is a good sort of testament to the fact that, hey, we took the time to re-engineer ourselves to be able to do this, and the results are starting to show now.
So what does it mean for, clearly it's too early to talk about the next version. It's just RTM, so, but you know how people are.
In a few days.
Yeah, everybody on Channel 9 wants to talk about Windows 7. It's like, install Vista, that's what's here today. But what do you mean by success? You set yourselves up for success. Does that mean faster innovation, faster to market, less bugs? What exactly do you mean success?
All of the above.
All of the above.
It's basically like, hey, you have a plan, and the plan says that, here are a set of features that's going to enable a set of scenarios for our customers that is going to be, exciting, effective, make them productive and all that fun stuff, right? Now, can we do that, in a reasonable plan with a reasonable amount of time, with the right level of quality, and deliver a compelling product to our customers, right? And to me, that's what, success is for. It's like any other, software project. It's, you have a finite amount of resources, you think about time to market, you think about the features, and you think about the quality, and all four need to come together for you to be able to deliver on that, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we were able to do the team at large here, did a fantastic job of getting us to that point, right? I do want to take this opportunity and, like always, right, say first congratulations to the team, and then also take this out to thank the team, because I know that some of our team members have been working really hard. I know, like, Carol here, had to fly pretty much all over the country last weekend to try to get some media issues sorted out in the last minute. But I know that people have, done a lot of, phenomenal things to help us get to where we are. So I do want to say thank you, right? The other set of people that I always say, thank you at this, sort of using this opportunity is sort of you all, the Channel 9 audience, right? Our community, our customers, right? These, our community and customers have been working with us hand in hand right from day one, starting from when we think about like what the plans are, what the designs are. Here is the early build, take a look at it, give us some feedback, tell us what the bugs are, tell us whether this feature is working well or not. And some of our customers have taken a bet on our technologies and said, hey, we are going to build applications using this latest and greatest product and deploy them in a real life production environment even before we ship the product. And I want to thank all of those people who worked with us hand in hand. And without their invaluable help, we wouldn't have been able to deliver a fantastic product like what we are doing today. So both to our team and to our community, thank you.
All right, cheers to everybody. Excellent. So, what are continue?
No, so I don't know whether I really answered your question or you want to talk about a little bit about the future kind of thing, right? I think today afternoon we're going to have some fun. First of all, that's the thing. It's we need a little bit of downtime, maybe a few hours. But to be fair, I think people in the team have been starting to plan for what comes after Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5, right? We've got a slew of sort of technologies and product releases that we are thinking about doing in the next year, next 6 months, next year, 2 years kind of thing. I'll sort of highlight a couple things that our customers are going to see in the next few months, right? One is we've been talking about parallel computing for a long time now. To me, that's sort of one big shift in the industry that's going to happen, particularly as Intel and other hardware partners are going to coming out with systems that are multi-core and many-core, and they're talking about 8 cores and 16 cores and 64 cores and 120. Who knows how many cores it's going to come? But there is a lot of processing power, and we'll have to figure out how we enable the software developers of the world to be able to take advantage of that, right? So we've been doing some early incubation and work in this space for the last year or so now, and the team is getting close to shipping a technology preview of some of the technologies that we talked about. Right now, we've talked about it in multiple forums. In the past, we've talked about parallel, a link. We've talked about some parallel extensions to the languages. So I think people are going to see a technology preview, an early preview of that in the coming months. So that's sort of one thing that I already talked about what we are doing for the C++ community in terms of providing some additional libraries that enable them to take advantage of the latest and greatest features in the platform. So that's one thing that we are doing. The Visual Studio Test team is busy. As much as we sort of shipping Visual Studio 2008 today, they are starting to work on the next version of Visual Studio Team System, which we've codenamed Rosario. We've started to plan for the next version of Visual Studio post Visual Studio 2008, which we've codenamed VS10. Right? We got people working on the next version of Silverlight. We've working on the next version of Expression Studio. We got people thinking about adding tool support in Visual Studio for Silverlight. So there's a variety of things across the board that the teams are either doing or planning. That I think for things that we think we have some code that is running, we want to be able to start putting out technology previews, and as our VS10 plans start shaping up, we'll be able to share with you all and sort of start getting feedback.
So I mean, it seems like, and this happens across product teams at Microsoft. I mean, this is a pretty amazing release. I mean, it's a great large chunk of technology. Why don't you give everybody a vacation? Right? Why don't you send them to Maui for a week? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not possible. You'd be the most popular VP of Microsoft history.
That he already is. Why would he try any harder?
Let me put this way. You may get some of what you're asking for even before you realize. Let me stop that.
Excellent. So we just talked about the future. We talked about how about the future of what are some of the things that you'll see that might change in MQ, or I guess however you want to describe it.
In our next MQ?
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, you started MQ and this intentional engineering and stuff before 2008, right?
Correct.
Was it even 2005? Were you doing some of that?
We took a break between VS 2005 and VS 2008 of about 4 months, and we had the pillars of get clean, stay clean, move quality upstreams, and make life easier as themes of how we grouped our work to set us up for intentional engineering for VS 2008.
Okay.
For the next MQ we do between VS 2008 and VS 10, it's not going to be quite as large because we have quite a bit going on right now, as Soma just talked about. The big thing we're going to do is we're going to post-mortem, how VS 2008 went for us, and we're doing that activity now, and talk about, what improvements can we make or minor tweaks can we make to the system from what we've learned over the last product cycle. We actually don't want to make, and then we have some test infrastructure solutions that we want to work towards to keep optimizing the test organization. But other than that, we actually, because we made so much change last time, we wanted to give it another product cycle. We're kind of shifting a homeostasis of how we work around here and how we get work done. And so we want to keep going down the path and learning as opposed to doing more major changes, because we did very well this last time, but we certainly have a lot to learn and can make some changes to the system and then try again. It's kind of, now we're on that, now that we're in intentional engineering, we're on that continuous improvement journey where we just want to learn and build from that.
And then you share that with other teams across the company. I mean, maybe you should sit down with Sanofsky and have a talk about how they can do this stuff over in Windows. But it does beg a good question, and that is how far, I mean, if you compare Visual Studio and the amount of moving parts you have to something like the galaxy of Windows, would it scale to an organization of that size, to a product of that complexity? Probably parts of it. And the other question I would ask is, how many people over in other groups are using Visual Studio to build their applications, including team systems?
So I'm going to say two things. First is, since you brought up Steven Sanofsky, I'll say this. Some of the ideas that we had for our MQ, we actually sort of learned from Office. Steven, when he was running Office, right, he used to do this feature cruise and other things, and we absolutely learned from that and said, hey, if this is working for Office, what does it mean for us? Should we use that as it is, or should we sort of tweak a little bit to fit dev? So there is a lot of sharing that happens between the product teams right now. John Devon actually spearheads an engineering excellence effort, and as part of that, every year or so, we take a couple of days, the product teams all get together and talk about like, the best practices and sharing best practices. So that happens, that's sort of a regular part of like, how things happen here at Microsoft.
Excellent.
The other thing you asked about Windows and Office, and they are both of those teams are now using Team Foundation Server to do a lot of their project management,
Nice.
and it's very exciting to see how it scales and is able to meet the needs of a large team like that.
As a sequel, all the major organizations are.
That's right.
Cool.
They love the reporting and a lot of the control that they get and insight into what's going on with their projects. So we're really excited about the progress they've made there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
For me personally, as we were using Team Foundation Server in Visual Studio 2008, as we were building the product, the one thing that was hugely valuable to me personally was the insight that I was able to get into the status of the project. I remember there were days, Carol would come to me and was saying, hey, we were supposed to be at X percentage features done, we are only at X minus some percentage done. The world is coming to an end, what do we do? Right? But it is like, the fact is, when things are going well, or when things are not going well, being able to understand that right then and there, gives us a huge amount of flexibility and opportunity to do some course correction here, some resource allocation there, some scoping here, or doing whatever it takes to keep the project sort of moving along in the right direction at the right pace, right? So Team Foundation Server, because I'm sure there are a lot of other benefits that Jeff can talk about for the next few hours. For me personally, just getting that insight into what is happening in the project, hey, where are the hot spots, where are things going well, right? Just being able to have that picture day in and day out of the project was a huge benefit for me personally as we were building Visual Studio 2008.
Excellent. So it's VP friendly. That's nice.
And Charles, we should find some time.
To the dismay of those in the hot spots.
Oh, I bet. So that brings up an interesting question. Like, what do you do? Soma's a nice guy. He doesn't actually pull out the chainsaw that's over there.
I haven't seen it yet. Well, the amazing thing is it's we took an open system and made it a closed system, so the teams all got the feedback loop as to what their estimating variance was each milestone, even each iteration. So, our effort estimating in terms of how many features we'd commit to in a milestone was huge in M1 and was very tight by M3. So just the fact that we were able to give them some feedback and they were able to see the variance in their estimating skills and abilities was a huge help in and of itself. And I'm sure having the VP know your status helped a little too, but definitely it provided them the feedback to change for themselves. And that's really all it took.
Excellent. So, but it's an interesting point because you have so many different teams and you have varying levels of complexity. So, for example, people working on the kernel of the CLR, right?
Right.
It's a virtual machine. They might have a much harder problem to solve that they can't get to make the milestone. So you guys have in your analysis figure out, you can say, well, yeah, that's a tougher problem than this UI issue this other group is having. So we'll go we'll have the VP send them an email and say, what's going on? You know what I mean?
But,
do you have that sort of modeling, or is it a flat?
We did have a decision-making framework, but that comes back down to what are the pillars of the release, and those things were marked as critical. So if those things were slipping, those were the ones that got a lot of love and attention and care from us. Whereas the things that were marked as value add, which means that they're very important to us and they add a lot of value to our customer base, but we wouldn't necessarily, the term was hold the release for. Those if you started slipping, we still had a conversation, but it wasn't as intense as if it was critical. The other thing is when you ask me about the teams and their effort estimating, we don't have to estimate their effort. They own the feature crews, not even their management. They own their estimates and their commitments, and so we just hold them accountable to what they commit to. But we give them the latitude to get work done how it is best. And everybody makes mistakes. You always get I totally forgot that this is going to happen, or totally big surprises. So. It happens, and the point is that your variance over time is flat. So you have to have some things where you come in early to balance out those that you come in late. So that's what we had to focus on, was getting a tighter variance in our estimating efforts.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And by using TFS, they were able to have us, not that I'm trying to sell anything.
What are you again? You're the chief marketing officer for TFS?
Exactly. Yeah. Between he and I, we
That's
sold
right.
1 million copies.
But anyway, my point is that the fact that they stored all this information in there, allowed them to look back and say, yeah, our estimates were like this, but in fact our actuals were like this, and then get a sense of what their actual velocity could be. And so a team like you were saying, the core of the CLR, they may have a different kind of velocity for their team, but they can get that information, mine that out of the system so that they can get a better sense of what they can do personally. And so it gives them more empowerment to make those better estimates over time.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Well, I mean, great job and congratulations to all of you, and to the extended team for an exceptional release of high quality. And we'll see what the feedback is from the real world.
Absolutely.
And you guys, as always, Soma, you'll use that in the
Absolutely,
next
that'll be a key part of key input for the next release. But again, we are all very excited about the products that we are putting out today. Later today sometime, hopefully, for our MSDN subscribers should be able to go up on MSDN and get access to the full family of the Visual Studio 2008 and .NET Framework 3.5, starting from Visual Studio Express to the Pro to Team System. So all versions of the Visual Studio product as well as .NET Framework 3.5. People can go up on MSDN later today and be able to download it. And hopefully they'll find it as exciting as it is for us.
Absolutely. And it will run on Vista.
Absolutely.
Without having to be in a virtual machine.
Yep.
Very well.
Outstanding. Hey, thank you all for your time. Great to talk to you. And we'll come and visit you again during the course of the creation of VS10.
Okay.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Charles.
Absolutely.
And to all the Channel 9 members or audience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.